let's start. Welcome to our second Oyama Live session. We are here to discuss timely topics of work-life well-being and mental health. And today, actually, we are talking about leadership in the startups and growth companies. My name is Juha Hynynen. I'm a psychologist. I work as an organizational coach and relationship expert. And here's my colleague, Niklas.
Hello, hello.
He's a founder of Oyama. And we have also a special guest today. His name is Juha Hynynen, and welcome Juha to join our company.
Thank you.
Nice to have you here.
Nice to be here.
You've done a remarkable career for over 20 years in working hands-on in a senior executive position in international expert organizations. You've also worked during the past 9 years as a business development consultant and leadership and strategy coach in Finland and abroad, right?
That's true.
And nowadays you're a CFO in a company called Family in Music.
Mm-hmm.
We are very happy to have you here. We're sure that you have a lot of wisdom to share.
Great to be here,
Yes,
Niklas.
nice to have you.
How are you?
I'm great. Feeling good.
Good.
How are you?
I'm fine too. Happy to have our Oyama Live session. How are you, Niklas? Actually.
Definitely better this week than last week.
Okay.
Very good, thank you. Definitely less stressful session this time, so
Yeah.
very nice.
Thanks
for asking.
You're welcome. What would you tell us about your background more precisely?
Well, I've been working in fairly many sized of companies, in tiny ones, small ones, medium-sized ones, large ones. Pretty much all technology companies. What comes to leadership in those different companies, it seems that no matter what size of company you have, obviously working with people is always the same, and finding ways to motivate people is always based on the same principles. So it's been an interesting journey, not just in Finland but also outside Finland, to learn this.
Cool. Let's go deeper after a moment, but I'd like to ask you, what has been the most difficult situation for you as a leader in your career?
Well, it's always difficult when you are facing situations when you have to downsize your organization, meaning having to let people go due to financial problems, and having to have those discussions with people which you know can even change their lives fundamentally is always difficult.
True. And what would be your most important advice to leaders in the same situation?
Well, in that situation, of course, you always have to follow the process by the book, meaning follow the rules and regulations. But what comes to the human side of those situations, I think the most important thing is to just allow some time to listen to people when you are having those discussions, because they always have a story to tell, and even though it doesn't change the end result in any ways, it's always human to allow that feedback to take place. And typically, if you do that, then even in that type of sad situation, the outcome can be relatively decent if everybody understands why things went as they went.
Yeah, that definitely helps people to cope with that difficult situation.
Yes.
Yeah. And I've also heard that you have some connections to Maria 01. Would you tell us something about that?
Oh, that's based on a lifelong presence in the great Helsinki metropolitan area. Of course, this place used to be a hospital.
True.
When I was slightly younger, and I actually used to live when I started my studies along Lapilahden katu, couple of blocks from here. So this is actually my old neighborhood.
Cool.
And my son used to be working here in one startup company not that long ago. So
Which company was that?
it was the Prompter.ai,
Nice.
which was then acquired by Matchmade. And I think they used to be here at some point, but now they moved out after they grew.
Of course.
Cool. And I think you have also titled yourself as a startup veteran, right?
I have, yes.
What's the story behind that?
Well, I guess that is justified by the fact that I basically was a co-founder of my first startup company in 1992.
That's when I was born.
Yeah.
The company was called Resolutions, and it was developing the first ever Microsoft Windows-based project management software, and it was distributed at some point worldwide.
It's very impressive. It was before Windows 95 for sure.
And one bit of startup history is, and this is also public information, that Mr. Morten Mikkos, who many of you know from his later career, was firstly hired by me to Resolutions as the export director.
Awesome.
And that of course gave him a huge boost to his career.
Obviously.
Cool.
Very cool. I also remember, of course, your involvement in Sulake and Habbo Hotel, which we all remember. Even though I wasn't a gamer, I still remember, and Habbo Hotel is still a popular game today.
It is, yes.
How long were you with them?
Well, I used to work there for 6 years as the CFO and COO and in some other roles. It was interesting when I joined the company. It turned out that one job, which was quite crucial for the success of the Habbo Hotel, was the hotel manager. I mean, every Habbo Hotel
I had a manager, yeah.
had a hotel manager, and this person's role was to make sure that the hotel was sort of a lively place.
And real physical manager in the game. Yeah.
Yes. And I remember when I first joined Sulake, and there was this first trip to Spain to a company kickoff, and we were staying, of course, in Spain in a hotel, and I didn't know much anybody, and then we were sitting in the bar of the hotel, and then this guy comes to us and to me and introduces himself as the hotel manager.
Yeah.
I thought that he was working for Sulake, but it turned out that he was the hotel manager of that hotel.
That's a good one.
Yeah. So quite impressive career. Nowadays you're working as a CFO in Family Music.
True.
What about Family Music? Isn't it heading to its success story also?
Yes, Family Music is a company which was established a little bit more than a year ago, and it now employs approximately 25 people, and Family Music is developing a platform and a service which is going to disrupt the way music industry is operating, connecting different parties who work within the music industry, do-it-yourself artists and publishers and distributors and other people, and actually offering all those different parties a service on a single platform, allowing essentially people to become music industry professionals without having to go through the tedious and long traditional track of finding your way to success. So it's all about the yet to be found Ed Sheerans
And Adele's.
to become famous, because music distribution is going to be all digital, and not that far in the future, and that requires new structures to music industry. So that's what Family Music is doing. And actually, Family Music was just today in Kauppalehti. We are going to establish a music industry hub in the Keila-Lampi area.
Awesome.
And many music industry entities have already gathered in Keila-Lampi, and Family Music is going to be sort of the connecting force for all of them, even in a physical way, not just digital way.
So we have a chance of taking on Spotify and Stockholm as being a music hub in Finland as well.
Oh yeah, they are history already.
Wildly interesting.
Yeah, true. I think we are willing to have our parts of your wisdom. So let's go and dive deeper in this topic of today. What would you, Juha, say? What are the most important factors that one should consider in order to develop teamwork and in a startup company?
Well, I would say that in any team, in order for it to be efficient and a winning team, you will have to make sure that the competencies that you have in the team are complementing each other, so that each and everyone in the team feels that they are an irreplaceable person in the team and are bringing something unique to the cooperation. Of course, you will have to find people into the team who get along with each other. So I think that the big challenge for the founder or the CEO is to select and find the right people who complement each other, not just through the competence but also through the way they work and operate. And I know that it's sometimes difficult because you don't usually have the luxury of being able to select people, but rather you have some people and you have to be able to work with those people. But the more you actually understand and know the people you are working with, the better chances you are to make sure that you are not creating any unnecessary conflicts between people.
And what is your best advice to leaders, or for example for Niklas, about how to motivate and coach team members enough and still have some time to actually lead the company and an organization, the whole things?
Well, I'm sure that's a key key challenge to make sure that the company is going to be successful. I think what is crucial is that well, first of all, you have to make your leadership visible to people. You have to make sure that you know that they are being led. And then you have to try to find some sort of key forces in your team whom everybody else is watching in addition to watching you, of course, but typically there are some other people whom the rest are following. So you have to make sure that you get these key people to follow you.
And how to do that? How to ensure that people are following him?
Well, you have to convince them that you do have a vision which is inspiring and ambitious but still realistic, and you do have a concrete plan how to achieve those objectives and start your journey towards the vision.
Mm-hmm.
And even though you know that there are many uncertainties on the way, but you still will have to try to create an atmosphere where most of the uncertainties are pushed aside and you absorb them and you worry about them and create a feeling to people that this is the person I want to follow, because even though there are even some things that even he doesn't know, then once it is time to solve them, then he'll find a way. So the sort of situation with the CEO is that it's an extremely lonely position to be in, and there are not too many people in the team that you can openly talk about everything that you know is happening.
That's a familiar problem, and which leads to what I was gonna ask is that we've also had some conversations here with other CEOs at Maria 01. It's like, well, there clearly may be some sort of founder wall or especially a CEO wall regarding some of the issues. So who should the CEO talk to then, or who should how should the CEO handle this stressful burden then of having to kind of filter some of the problems that the company may have, if I understand you correctly?
Well, the typical sort of organizational problem in a startup company is that the board is the CEO, who is also the founder, and even the chief operating officer.
Yeah.
So it's sort of one role or several roles and only one person. But then I think it would be quite useful to try to find a coach or a mentor who has been in a similar situation, who knows exactly what you are going through, and get some advice and not even advice, some
Support. Yeah.
support, therapy even.
Yeah. Definitely. I think that's brilliant. Like, who is not a part of the board, who might be completely separated from the company, but an external coach.
Yes, because there are things that you don't want to talk about even with the board and not with the team members.
Yeah, precisely. And often the founder may also be the chairman of the board, so then it's and you don't always get to choose your board so closely, because it tends to be investors, and well, in best of worlds you have been able to pick your board very carefully, but I think that's brilliant advice.
Yes, because the good news is that it's quite likely that there is not going to be any situation that you are facing which somebody else would not have been facing already. So typically even the difficult situations are always happening
Precisely.
in every company.
Yeah.
And you might, if you just start to think them by yourself, you might think that this is an impossible situation, there's no way out.
Yeah.
But there's always a way out. You just have to ask to somebody who has been in that situation and got themselves out from that situation.
Yeah. Find the route out and get some help on finding the map.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's brilliant. And the other question I wanted to ask is, especially of course in the early stage, I think for us the most helpful is kind of how to gather that first team, and then it's pretty important that they follow the founder's vision and we efficiently make progress. But as the company grows, how do you see that, like you mentioned that there may be some other key persons on the team as well, or how do you see the leadership kind of change as the company and the team grows as well?
Well, when you start a small company, then typically it's a bunch of your friends who decide that this is going to be a unicorn in a couple of years' time, and then we can enjoy our lives for the rest of it.
Precisely.
And amongst friends, you pretty much know what everybody does, and it can be even automatic without much leadership. But when you start to have more people, even people whom you hired and did not know beforehand, then you start to have human resources administration problems. And my sort of personal fact figure is that once you start to have more than 18 people, that's the point when you start to have sort of human HR problems.
Yeah.
And the thing is that if you only have 5 people or 10 people, you might think that we don't need any leadership. This is all going to be automatic. It's not needed. We just do our thing, and then we go and have a beer, and that's it.
Yeah.
But if you don't prepare yourself at that point to the fact that you might have at some point more than 18 people, then it's already too late.
Yeah. Precisely. You see a lot of those examples as well. Who really struggle.
So you have to
at that point.
start to. I'm not saying that there has to be bureaucracy, but some basic processes in place to then allow the growth of the company. It makes it much easier.
Yeah. That's, I think, very, very good indeed. And then would you say that after that, of course, 18 people is still a pretty small group of people, but when does it change again? Do you see any like specific point where you really need to focus more, even more on creating more processes, or do you think that a lot of the structures can be built already, preparing for having like more than?
Well, I think it's partially you need to have some processes, but then you need to start to develop a culture of shared leadership and a coaching type of leadership, maybe some agile working methods. And if you have those built into the thinking of people, then it's fairly straightforward to add more resources, more volume, more processes, if that sort of baseline or sort of basis is strong and solid enough. And then, of course, once you start to have so many people that you are actually starting to see layers of of different teams with different leadership in the organization, then it's a good idea to try to find people who have been leading people also earlier in their lives, so
Yeah.
that they have a basic sense of what it means that you need to lead people.
Makes sense. I guess at this point, Jana is probably also eager to ask, like, what are really those tools or processes that you would need? I'm sure that the audience would like to hear, like, what are the structures and processes you think that would be really critical? I'm a big believer in that you should have the minimal amount of process or structure, but what would you say is like the minimal things that should be in place from 18 people onwards, for example, the best practices?
Well, I think one first process that would be quite useful is to agree on how decisions are being made in the company, so that people have a feeling that even though the organization is growing, they can still influence the way the company is being developed, rather than for instance, the founder thinking that he has the best knowledge of everything in the world and he can continue making decisions because that's his role.
Yeah.
That's not the case, but you need to involve people in the decision making so that people still feel that this is their company and not just the founder's company.
Precisely.
And people just working there 9 to 5.
Yeah.
That's not how you build a company.
Exactly.
And then I guess the other thing which is quite crucial is some process for taking in new people, the sort of introductory process for new people,
Right.
how
Right.
this company operates and
Right.
what is the culture.
Some proper onboarding. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And these two things are too often just forgotten. Nobody thinks about them, and people are just being thrown in.
Yeah.
And surely they find their way in the company, but it doesn't happen automatically. And typically, the existing people are too busy to do anything, and they hope that maybe somebody else will tell this new guy what to do.
Yeah. Not gonna happen. That's brilliant.
And for the people online, if you have any questions, just ask them in the chat field so I can read it from my computer and then ask from Juha. So feel free to ask anything you want to know. But Juha, what about the recruiting process? What is your best advice to, for example, Niklas? Can you give some kind of personality profile, which is the best profile for the employer who is coming into the company in this, especially this kind of startups, which needs independent workers and also kind of skillful ones too.
Well, it's again the founder or the CEO would have to know well enough the people who already exist in the team to maybe understand what kind of personalities would make the most sense what comes to adding to the team rather than creating any conflicts necessarily. But surely in any startup company, one requirement is typically that people will have to be able to work in a fairly independent way. And of course, in the COVID times, that is even more a pressing requirement. But even without any COVIDs, the sort of an entrepreneur type of attitude to things is quite useful. rather than having people who need to be told what to do, you would want to rather have people, if they feel that they don't know exactly what needs to be done, they go and ask somebody what should be done, and even better, they find themselves what would make the most sense when it comes to practical things to be done for the good of the company. But somehow, if you, at least in the beginning of the journey of your company, have a bunch of entrepreneurs that can work together in a meaningful way, and along the guidelines of where the vision should take the company, then that would be a good situation.
That would be a good start for sure. I think in many startup companies, of course, or let's say in the entrepreneurial ecosystem, you often find quite hands-on type of individuals who often have worked or are genuinely interested in working in or in startups rather than in corporates, and I think that's often at least something that I think a lot about, that it's quite different world from the corporate life, for example, that it's not so easy to find a person from a corporate or a big enterprise who would come into an early stage startup and really be able to do or be hands-on enough or independent perhaps, but it's a very different type of mindset in many ways, which leads to that it's probably within the ecosystem that one often recruits. But how should you assess or make sure that you find the right type of personality traits, for example, in a person that you're recruiting into the team?
Well, of course, there are even some tools to be used when you are recruiting people to basically allow you to assess the personality, the combination of different aspects of personality that the person has.
Right.
So that's one way.
And what would you use in big corporates or in consultancies or big consultancy companies? You often have some pretty well-known personality assessments, perhaps, that are used. But what would you suggest or recommend that somebody would use?
Well, I know that there has been a lot of discussion and articles on the different tools that are available. But one particular tool that I've been using is called Workplace Big Five, which I think what comes to the sort of research behind it is the most sort of approved by researchers globally. So that is definitely one tool to look at.
It's really good. And what are the traits that one should be looking for then, or how should one apply, for example, these type of tools such as Workplace Big Five?
Well, I wouldn't say that you should be looking at any particular traits of your personality, but rather just understand through the sort of evaluation and analysis what the new person's personality actually is, and then think how well this new person could fit in the existing team. Of course, assuming that you do know the personalities of the existing team members as well.
Right.
One thing that came to mind what comes to the challenges from a startup company to a growth company and even to a big company. You mentioned that sometimes people having been working in the corporate life might have a hard time adjusting themselves into a small company. But it also goes the other way around, and sometimes somebody has entered a startup company, a small company, the type of company where you actually take your shoes off when you go to the office in the morning.
Precisely.
And sit in the kitchen and have nice talks. And I've seen that happening in many times that when the company grows too big, then these people who were quite sort of core in making the company successful,
Put the shoes on and leave.
yes, they feel that this is not their company anymore. This is not the type of company anymore that they want to work in.
Right.
So if you can somehow find a way to make sure that the key people that you have who entered the company when it was small are still willing to stay, even if you are starting to be successful and big,
Yeah.
that would be a good thing to keep in mind.
Yeah. And how would you do that then? Like, what are the core things you can do? Because I think if we start, let's say, about the growth stage for a bit, and you mentioned that you can use these different tools to find really the right key people who have experience of leading people in the past, but you bring on these new people and you find really great leaders to join. So how should you assure, maybe in the recruitment phase or afterwards, that also the people who weren't used to be maybe led or managed so much could stay?
Well, I think you have to listen to people carefully, and it often happens that you have this guy who is just a wizard in creating, for instance, code really rapidly, flawless, high quality, no problems, and then suddenly this person comes to you and tells that he actually would rather start to do something completely different in the company, and you are quite reluctantly allowing that to happen, because this guy is such a super performer in creating code. But it's those moments when you really have to think twice and probably allow the change to happen if you want to keep this person in the company in the first place, because people want change, and if the company is something that is no longer what they came to work in, then they might actually need a change in their role, and then they might be happy.
Yeah, yeah.
And the role change might actually be even quite drastic. I mean, your super performing developer might want to become an HR person. Nothing to do with developing code.
No.
But you might want to let that to happen.
Yeah. And if they don't come up to you, are there any signs that you can look for that the person is really not so happy with what's going on?
Well,
let's say, especially if you're remote, if you're a fully remote team.
Well, let's at some point Oyama is a 100% person company in a big office building, maybe located in a couple of countries, and then at that point, if you stop going to the sort of factory floor and talk to people, not just when you have something acute to tell them, but just small talk, just walk through the office and sit on somebody's desk and have a chat over a cup of coffee, then that's the way that you can sort of measure the atmosphere.
Sense the vibe, really.
Yeah, it's sometimes amazing in companies where that has not happened frequently enough, and when the CEO finally goes to the other floor
Mm.
from his own office, then people can talk about that weeks after that happened.
Mhm,
That
mhm.
We actually saw the CEO. He was here.
Came out.
He drank the same lousy coffee as we are.
But
And he
people-
didn't even have anything sort of dramatic to say.
Yeah, he was just having a coffee.
He came to talk about his dog or the way he spent his weekend.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
Yeah.
He's a human being.
Mm.
But it's important to people.
Mm.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah. I think my final question will be that what do you think about human resource optimization? The perspective when you hire people and you see the resources but not maybe them performing yet the way you would like them to perform in the future.
Mm.
Do you think that's something we should really focus on more? Or what do you think?
Well, the first thing that I think is that since I have a mathematical background, optimization in this particular thing is not possible. There is no
Yes.
optimum. But typically, any human being in a professional environment, by definition, wants to be successful. We all want to be successful in what we do. If we don't, then we might actually look for from medical
Mm-hmm.
or psychological help.
Mm.
But typically we want to be successful.
Mm.
And if we are just given the opportunity to be successful, then we will be that. So the big role of a leader is to just find a way and make sure that everybody can be successful. They might at that moment be for some reason underperforming, but there's typically a reason for the underperformance, which you can easily sort of change or fix. You just have to know what the reason is. They might actually not know what they should be doing, or they might think that the way they would do this is much better than the way they have been told to do this.
Mm.
They might not understand the reason why the thing is being done in the first place. They might feel that they have not been listened to when something has been decided to be done in a certain way.
Mm.
So there are lots of things that you can sort of take your existing team and in a way streamline the operations of your existing team to its best possible state by just understanding why some things are not being done in the way they could, and then fixing that. It's as easy as that, but typically people are not in an organization mind readers. So even if the CEO is thinking hard that why is this guy doing that particular thing in such a stupid way, then if you don't go and tell this person the fact that then he cannot read your mind, and you just have to communicate and of course create an atmosphere which allows open communication, which is constructive and sort of forward looking.
Yeah, and talking to your humans or talking to your people is really key here. I think we talk a lot, of course, nowadays about lean methodology and working very close to your customer, but I think we don't talk enough about that perhaps you should also talk to your, as a CEO, your customer, you could say, your people, right? Because those, I think many understand nowadays the basic methodologies of building startups for mentioned reasons that people tend to be quite entrepreneurial in the startup ecosystem as well. So maybe there's a lot more to learn as well about how to talk to your people in your organization as well. I think that's a brilliant.
Yes, and leadership is not easy, and there is not just one type of leadership that fits in every situation. You have to learn different ways to lead people, and if you have a difficult sort of catastrophe in your hands, then you might actually need to lead people in a different way than if you take a situation which is more sort of glorious and allows more freedom. It's like a ship in the storm rather than ship in open, easy waters. You just lead your crew in a different way in those two situations.
Exactly. You hear a lot about wartime and peacetime leaders, but I'm sure there are many different types of leadership styles as well in both war, but especially peacetime. So I think we might need another session for that.
Yeah, that's actually true for different employees also. You cannot use the same methods to different
To
people.
all people.
So it's almost the same as you have 3 kids. You cannot raise them in the same way. Or what do you think? You have 3 children.
No, well, they are amazingly different by personality, but I'm sure that sort of the basic culture that you create, which is common to all of them, is sort of a good nurturing environment. And then you have to find the individual bells and whistles that work the best way in all cases, and be able to use them and want to use them on an individual basis. Then that's the secret.
That's the secret.
I think those were the words where we can end up this session. Wrap it up.
Thank you, Juha. This was nice talk. I think we will need another session for sure.
Yes.
I will turn off the stream.
And thank you for all our listeners too.